era.
Maybe Discord's trying out some AI, and they're like, "This link looks a lot like the other link."
I think
I got this.
These links look a little shady.
I think
A
I got
link.
this.
A little shady link. What's going on, chat? How y'all doing out there today in the internet world? Happy Tuesday. We've been having a lot of fun just sitting down, talking to all kinds of things. Lots of really cool things going on in the world of gaming. Yesterday, we went through just a wide range of topics. So I'm going to take my notepad again. I'm going to keep my pen handy. And what actually made yesterday a lot more fun is that going back and putting in the timestamps for the podcast literally was so much smoother when I was just kind of taking notes with whatever time that it was in. Now, as a part of just kind of some show notes for those of you who are watching, listening, and more, sound off in the comments, hit the live chat, and we'll be able to highlight y'all's comments. Big faces since you aren't playing. Yesterday, Chris was playing Vampire Survivor, so we were up in the corner over on Twitch. We're also live here on YouTube, and we've been doing these shows Mondays and Tuesdays, splitting them out, breaking them up for you guys. So hopefully you guys have been enjoying the content. Today's programming schedule, I would like to talk to Chris about Diablo 4, anything that he really wants to kind of talk about in case there's some topics, because I heard something's better than pizza or something like that. So I'd like to get Chris's thoughts on that. And then I've picked out a couple of comments from YouTube. We haven't done a community feedback in a while, and I thought it would be kind of fun to kind of dip into the comments and get caught up on the conversations, what you guys are sharing with us, because we do read our comments. One of the reasons we like being YouTubers so much is because of you guys. Y'all have a lot of really cool thoughts and opinions. But that's all the preamble out of the way. Chris, dude, what's going on with you right now? What's going on with pizza? What were y'all talking about before I jumped in?
We've been just chatting and doing maps. I've been trying to farm up some crazy achievement. I'm trying to get in the top 40,000 globally in 14. And so while we did it, we were talking about a buddy of mine. He makes a lot more money than me, like a lot more money than me.
We talking about Zach?
No.
Okay. I was like,
no,
he works for
way
Apple.
more money than that. Way more.
Oh,
money.
wow.
Way more.
You got good friends.
And so I said, like, what is it that you do that has no parallel in my life? Like, my wife and I try to go out to eat like once or twice a week. I believe this week it will be Rose's Tacos. And the most recent one we had was we had pizza. So like, we're not like, I understand that like if you make more like the Yeti makes more money than me.
Yeah, he does.
By a
he
lot.
makes more money than me.
My
think his house is paid
my buddy
for.
that's a senior engineer at Apple makes more money than me. Like, I get that. They eat nicer than me, but like I also eat. What is it you do that there's no equivalent? There is no, like, that's just a better version of how I do it.
Right. Yeah.
And so like not food, not house, not car. Like those are all just things where it just scales up. But what do you do? And he has a laundry butler, which when he explained what that is just a drastically different life experience.
What's a laundry butler?
A laundry butler is, Brian, whenever you're done with that shirt, when you're done wearing anything, you just take that off wherever you want and you just drop it on the ground. Don't even worry about it.
Okay.
And they're going to come to your house 1 to 2 days a week while you're not there. And they're going to gather up all the dirty laundry in your house. They're going to clean up your closet and tidy it exactly the way you want. Like if you want all your clothes in color order or less formal to more formal, they're going to organize everything perfectly. They're going to take all that laundry away. After updating in the app, they're going to have photos of all the laundry they took. So you know what they have. Because in theory, at this point, you have laundry that's expensive. I'm not worried about if they like lose one of my t-shirts from Target, but like, if you have like 7 cashmere sweaters, maybe you care. So then they're going to have a GPS tracked van that will take it off site so that they can do the laundry perfectly. And then that will be brought back to you as that laundry is ready, and it will be put back away perfectly. If you have a specific way you want your t-shirts folded, that's how they'll be folded. Everything will be flawless.
Okay.
This is just handled 1 to 2 times a week. And that is not the difference between like my washer and a nicer washer. Like, that is a drastically different experience.
If you guys learned something today, you better smash that like button. That's all I'm going to say.
Somebody out there sold a ton of crypto back when that was booming. And they're like, I haven't known what to spend it on.
Laundry Butler
is the way you can yeet money into the void and life can be different.
So life goal now, turn my children into laundry butlers. It's like, all right, kids, new training regimen. You want that chocolate pudding for dinner. I want some color-coded sorting of all the linens.
Just the fact that this is just happening, that he's just like, his closet is just flawless all of the time.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds awesome.
And that ninjas break into his house and have that happen for him as a service.
That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes me feel like I've
like,
made a couple of bad
happens,
life decisions.
You said they only come when you're not there. How do they know when you're there? And he's like, they just asked my doorman.
Oh yeah.
So, sorry. I forgot. This is on top of all the things you already do that are just better than mine.
Right.
This is only available if you've already done all the other steps along the way.
Yeah.
And the doorman will know because he can tell which one of his expensive cars are missing. I was like, the fact that you have multiple cars and you live in New York City is outrageous.
You have a car and live in New York City. I don't understand that at all, but man, that's wild. Yeah, you got good friends. You got good friends. So I guess when we need to start a venture capitalist, we have a list of people to call. Perfect. Excellent. All right. Well, that was educational for me. I do feel like I'm I'm doing kids' laundry. I'm their laundry butler for my kids right now, and that's we gotta get that switched.
I doubt it. They hear from you about it.
Oh, so it's not like
no. This is like, all unspoken. This is just happening. Never talk about laundry again. Ever.
Wild.
It just gets handled. He never sees them, hears from them. There's an app that he can check in if he's curious.
I don't know if this is going to be an appropriate story to tell, but back when I was hot, I had in college, I rescued a girl off the side of the road. Her car broke down and stranded, and she was like, how can I thank you? How can I possibly thank you? We went to the same university, and I was like, no, you're good. Like, we're fine. Like, you were stuck. I was going to help you. And she begged for like 2 weeks. She's like, there's got to be some way I could repay you. Let me do your laundry. And I was like, no, that's a bit weird. No. It's going to be perfect. Let me do your laundry. And finally I relented, and she did my laundry for a year. And my wife today still thinks that's weird. I agree with her. It is weird.
That lady now owns a laundry butler business in New York City.
That's who she is now. That's the connection.
She's like, oh, I could just do this for wealthy people.
For wealthy people who pay, and not broke baseball player college students out there. So anyway, tip of the hat. Thank you so much, Michelle. Appreciate your support in college. Hopefully you're doing well. All right. Let's talk video games. Does that sound good?
Yeah. That sounds great.
Perfect. All right, guys. So for our first topic, our main kind of topic before we jump into our community comments and more, we're talking about Diablo 4. Now, I got a chance to go hands-on with it over this weekend. Chris, are you going to check it out this coming weekend? I'm just generally curious.
Yeah, so I was going to join the queue Friday night and try to play Sunday after breakfast.
Okay, cool.
I think that's about the time that I expect queue to take.
the queues, I think
they'll give me in for the Sunday 4 a.m. slot.
I don't think the queues were that bad personally. There were a couple times that I hit
stable when it was paid. This is free.
The longest queue I saw was 45 minutes for me. I wasn't actively always like gotta be online after Friday. That was only on Friday though. That's when it went live and all the initial rush. Saturday, like I had a 1 minute queue. Sunday, a 0 minute queue wasn't. And I guess the catch here is that there isn't a huge wave of people like investing in their characters because they know that after this coming weekend, it's all going to get reset. But I got to level 11 and I got to level 5 on Sorceress. So I got level 11 on a.
Didn't get the puppy pack.
Not yet. I get this coming weekend to finish it off. Dude, I got kids, man.
But you could have a digital puppy in a backpack.
Yeah.
Instead of having like real kids care for you.
Real loving. And we did soccer all day on Sunday.
See, if they were already your laundry butlers, you could have just leveled up during their laundry butler time.
And if you want to know what he's talking about, if you did miss that in the clip or the live show, check the shorts. We're sure going to have that up there for you guys as a good, hopefully educational laugh. Smash like. All right. But no, in that case, I got Sorceress level 5. Awesome. Sorceress, you're absolutely right. Like the why am I drawing a blank? I want to call him Berserker, but it's the the big smashy smash. Why can't I think of the class name?
Barbarian.
I was like, why do I keep going back to Barbarian. And
because I always picture my Aunt Barb.
Well, I don't have an Aunt Barb, so like I guess point
don't
to
even think
Chris.
she's really my aunt. I think
yeah?
just if you grow up in Missouri, people that are around a lot are just family now.
You're one of your friends, like one of your mom's friends, like, oh yeah, this
like
is my
one of
best
my
friend,
grandma's friends, Barb. I don't know. I just picture her. She has a little like bob haircut and a cigarette in her hands, like at all times. She's looked the same since 1970.
Hey, what's up, Chris?
Somehow hasn't aged at all.
Give your Aunt Barb a hug, Chris. Come here. I'm just ridiculous today. So, Barbarian felt so slow. Like it was just like something where I was playing it. Like I absolutely had a blast. Played it all on controller. Released my controller guide this past Monday for Diablo. And then I switched over to Sorceress to make sure I'm testing how does it feel on ranged. And oh my gosh, like Sorceress just felt so much better overall, just as far as the class goes. So I'm sure we'll probably see some adjustments when it comes down to that. And so at its core, like I'm actually really kind of impressed by what we've played so far. There's no way we can know what the end game of Diablo right now feels like. This is all just kind of that initial offering. And so what are you going to be looking to kind of test? Because I know your brother was trying to decide if they wanted to get into it as well. What are you going to look at this weekend and basically then try to communicate to your brothers?
So I really just want to know how it runs on my machine. And that's about all I can test, in my opinion, because the vast majority of your Diablo experience is not leveling. As a matter of fact, historically in Diablo, if your friends join even like a week into the season, you just power level them. Like it's not a game that's really about the leveling. And like I hear the cutscenes and the story is delightful, but that feels more like, isn't it weird that not I expected that. It's like the Final Fantasy game, it's like the story's great. Don't tell me. But with Diablo, it's like the story's great. Why were you doing the story? So like I hear that's really well done, but I just don't think that's why you play. Like I've heard that certain Call of Duty games have great campaigns. We'll never confirm. Like it's just not why I play.
There's a campaign.
Like, they said one year they're going to ship it without the campaign to save them money and have a smaller installed space on your hard drive. I was like, smaller install. Woo. All right. Like it just doesn't. It doesn't make any difference to me. As opposed to like my neighbor. He's like, dude, I love Call of Duty games. I was like, we should play sometime. He goes, oh, I already beat the campaign. And I was like, what? And he goes, I only play for the campaign.
What?
I believe I've heard of people like you. I've never met you.
You found a unicorn.
That's so exciting. That's so exciting. I had no idea who those people were, but I caught one. So like beyond that, I want to know how the end game works, where I'm going to spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours if I end up picking this game up. And that's not something they're ready to show us. So I'd just like to know that the classes play okay, that it feels like there might be evidence that there's some build variety, that the servers seem like the game runs okay. And that's it. That's all I want to know. So like, I don't think I need 50 hours to do that. So my plan is to probably play it Sunday, because I assume that Friday and Saturday is going to be people who are like, I'm going to play from Friday to Sunday night. And then they realize they're not. And so I assume Sunday will be better. That's my plan.
I think you're going to be fine on Saturday. Like, so if you do find the time and you're like, hey, I'm not doing much on Saturday, I would absolutely check it out. Now, Solomon in chat says, Asmon also said that the Sorceress feels way better than Barb, and he usually always goes for the Barb character. So he just had more fun with the Sorceress this time around. So it's good to know that us two kind of gingerly balding gentlemen here in the Texas area agree. If you are ginger balding and look somewhat like Asmon or me, he is like his hair's kind of reddish. People always look at me and like, especially before I ever heard of the guy, they're like, hey, this guy looks like Asmon.
Like, he doesn't want to play like a big jacked dude and like have this like fantasy or whatever. And like, that's like his whole thing. So I guess mine is who doesn't want to play a lady with magic. I don't know. Like
I would, like hands down, you give me the choice, I would absolutely play as a lady with magic. That sounds like
shape-shifting is like my favorite. That's my go-to in like D&D and stuff. Like shape-shifting is just so cool.
Oh yeah,
big Animorphs fan back in the day.
Druid, dude, I'm so excited for this weekend to go hands-on with the Druid 100%. Roll none, excuse me. There's a separation between campaign and endgame, though the seasons there are substantial number of quests that make us wonder how it will impact the seasonal play of endgame. Do you have any concerns about how they are upgrading the seasonal model? Because it isn't, at least from my understanding, it isn't like previous Diablo Diablo 3 and kind of seasons where everything resets?
I expect the first one to be somewhere between I love this day one, day two, I can't believe they locked us behind this, it's terrible, and then just a whole bunch of people who were like, it would have been fine if they just made it good. And so that's what I expect the first season to kind of play out really rapidly. But from there, like, it's fine. Like, it's a seasonal game. Like, people still play seasons of Diablo. People still play seasons of Path of Exile. Like, that's what these games are. So out of the gate, you just need to have the template laid out so that we know what kinds of things you can do with seasons.
Yeah.
And if they can find a sustainable way to roll out keywords and affixes and all these kind of words, that rune words and all these different systems that different games in the action RPG space have used, that can make that fun. It does seem like it's going to be an affix heavy game from everything that I've heard so far, which means that if the affixes aren't fun, it won't be a fun season, because that's going to determine your variety. And so if there's not a lot of fun ways to do a build, we're all going to get pigeonholed into the same thing. And that's one of the things that, like, early Diablo 3 really frustrated the group I play with, is that it felt like, oh, no, I'll have to play pretty much the same thing. It's the same problem we ran into on launch with Wolcen, where it felt like there was really only one set of viable builds that were just wildly outperforming everything else. But, Diablo 2 has come back and they've been messing with things, and it's been largely positive feedback from everybody I've heard from. So there is evidence that it can be done. Path of Exile is always surrounded by some level of positive feedback. So it can be done well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think the first season is just about, like, what's the formula?
Yeah.
But now we're having the same conversations with Final Fantasy Blue Mage, where, like, I say, I like limited jobs. Be like, Blue Mage is terrible. I was like, okay, but can we talk about limited jobs for a second? Like, Blue Mage is terrible. It's like, so apparently we cannot have an adult conversation about the system, what the system is doing, the interesting idea behind the execution that future executions could use as a mold. There are future limited jobs that could be really great in Final Fantasy XIV, but we're so angry about Blue Mage that we may never get one. So, like, I'm not against the seasonal model, but the problem is, if it's not good the first season, there are going to be a lot of people that close their mind to the second and the third and the fourth season, because we live in a world that, like, in all honesty, they're not entirely crazy for doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why play a game that burned you once when you could play a game that hasn't burned you at all? Like, there's always another game right around the corner.
The one of the interesting things and takeaways, because there's going to be a lot here. The bigger conversation and question that we're going to kind of get to in this discussion is, where does Diablo 4 kind of fit in? Because seasons have that ability to bring you back in. But one of the things I was going to say to you from my initial offering is that I actually really appreciate kind of the MMO light nature, that shared world nature that they've brought in. The world still feels very Diablo. And then occasionally you get to see other players running around, and it gives you this sense of connectivity and to be able to interact in social different ways, but then at the same time be able to step into like a dungeon and things like that. And then it's still like you and your party, not like everybody's zerging down all of these wild bosses. I think that will be an interesting evolution for the game. Something that I thought Diablo Immortal was going to kind of help address, because that was my initial frustration with Immortal, where I was like, but I want to play with other people and have that. But then they went and just completely like mobile first, and, monetization actually first, mobile second, And so one of the things that take away already from the weekend was, it was really cool for me to see other people running around. But that then leads into the question kind of in terms of this. And one of the regrets I have actually right now as a gamer, because I don't have the context of it, but I was like, where does this now slot in with something like Path of Exile? A big community behind Path of Exile. Where does this slot in with something like Lost Ark? These are now more indirect competition than ever before. So where does Diablo 4 fit in with this structure? What do you think, Chris?
I do think that that's the case. There are people that like these games very, very seasonally. So, like, one of the interesting things about the ARPG space is they don't have to cannibalize as much as the MMOs, because there is this idea in something that's like Path of Exiles, where you could say, I'm going to play this season from the first day to the last day, and then I'm going to stop for 2 seasons, 3 seasons, whatever. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to play from the first day to the last day. So when we talk about like, oh, it's okay to take breaks from Final Fantasy XIV as long as you don't own a house, or it's okay to take breaks from WoW as long as you're willing to come back from a patch that doesn't have a release date yet, or it's okay to take breaks from Guild Wars because they don't ever ask you for money. Like, that's fine. But with Path of Exiles, there's a very clean bookend of when you start and when you stop, when you start and when you stop. And you know exactly what you're hopping in for. So it is a space where I think it feels less like this versus that. As opposed to in 14, when you talk about WoW, that's like insulting. Well, you chose to invest in this space. And so like how, like I have to be against you. We have to be rivals because most people don't have time for both Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft. They're too similar of games for you to make time for both. If somebody has time for a game beyond Final Fantasy or World of Warcraft, there's a pretty decent chance they're at least jumping genres. And they're playing Overwatch on the side, or they're playing Fortnite or Call of Duty, or you know, a racing game, or whatever. Stardew Valley. They're playing something that's just drastically different than an MMORPG.
Paul in chat says, do you guys think that we're going to see a significant drop in players on Diablo Immortal now that D4 is coming out? Do you think that it's do you think that the mobile version will allow you to retain its current player base? What do you think about how this competes with its own IP?
Diablo 2 has been getting a big resurgence. I don't know what their active player counts are, but like the fact that I hear it talked about at all is pretty crazy. Just considering how old it is. It came out in what, 96, 98? Like it's been a while. But this kind of like remaster of it, or whatever we're going to call that genre of games, these remakes, it's been handled really well. So I think that it starts to be the same idea as classic versus retail WoW, where ideally they are something that are complementing each other and not conflicting, where ideally it is somebody now feels the ability to play the flavor of the game that best suits the play session they're in. So if you like playing Diablo 4 with your friends and you like playing Diablo 2 by yourself, it's very easy to jump, because once you're inside a BattleNet, it's a very cohesive space. So I don't think they're cannibalizing there. I think Diablo Immortal is a totally different player. And that was the one advantage. Before Diablo Immortal ever launched, so we didn't know anything about all the issues it has now, the one advantage is that there are a whole group of players that play Diablo Immortal who have either left the traditional gaming space or have never been in the traditional gaming space, and you're introducing them to this franchise. And so for anybody out there that played Diablo and had fun and didn't feel over monetized to, that person might say, this was so cool. Are there other Diablo games? And somebody says, yeah, what platform do you have? I have a Switch. You should try Diablo 3 and see if something that's a more full-featured game feels better. And if they did that and they ended up liking it, they may just have a Switch casually. That might be something where they're like, oh, wow, and there's a new Diablo game coming out. And so now you've kind of like moved them through the franchise. So ideally they're doing it in a way where they're not competing with each other, but they're helping each other. That's the same thing I'd like to see out of Final Fantasy XI and Final Fantasy XIV. Is like, it would be really nice if, and that'd be really great if in a perfect world, if everything came out on time and everything was scheduled perfectly, it would be really great if there was like some great reason to play Final Fantasy XI on days that Final Fantasy XIV needed major maintenance for the next version of Data Center Travel or something like that. That way, those of us that want to play Final Fantasy are like, oh, I'll just play the other one.
What for me is interesting about this question is because obviously the mobile component is going to be a massive volume of players who can passively, very casually jump in and check out the game from time to time. Imagine stepping away from your computer or your console and still kind of wanting like a little grind fix. You're like a commute, or you're doing something, you know, where you're like, oh, let me just bring out the phone for a little bit and, you know, get a little fix that I'm excited to come home and play Diablo 4 or something like that. I think there's a complementary aspect, but there's also an interesting, you know, development that's been going on behind the scenes. And assuming that Microsoft does close on the Activision Blizzard deal, they have committed that all of Activision Blizzard games would also come to GeForce Now and all these other cloud platforms. So then you as a player could literally play your character on Diablo 4 from your phone. And then I think there's actually a real competition when all of a sudden that comes into play, because then, I mean, in my opinion, you guys can do what you want. But if you were going to say, hey, do you want to play this thing that you're really not that passionate about? Or do you want to kind of make some progress towards your seasonal goal or this or that or the other thing by having access to this? And the answer would always be, I would default to like Diablo and Destiny and, whatever games of service. Like I play a lot of like New World through GeForce Now. Blue Protocol will support that. I got into a conversation today on Blue Protocol Central where somebody was like frustrated that Blue Protocol isn't coming to PS4 and Xbox One, but I go, it's going to be streamed. Amazon has their games on GeForce Now. Like that's going to be an option for you if you have that, so that if you don't have to sit here and feel like you have to upgrade your hardware, that's going to become more and more over the course of the next 5-10 years, less of a barrier for people to kind of to participate in. So that in and of itself is pretty interesting. Running Gargle, kind of to comment on what Paul was saying, was like games launch usually just have a temporary shift on in-game communities, right? Because no matter what, you're like, let me go check out the new thing.
Yes. How bad would a new game have to be that playing something all new is worse than playing something you've already played? Like, that's how I felt when Dragonflight launched. That's how I'll feel when 7.0 launches, is like, whether or not it's your main game, it's 100% the best place to be week one. Like, I love launch weeks. Launch weeks are a blast. They come with all sorts of technical hurdles because there's about 1 billion of us that like launch weeks. And so we all slam the servers at the same time. But like, beyond the technical issues, beyond the fact that you very much need to have another game sitting in the wings in case you can't get in, launch weeks are fun. So yes, I do think that in the short term, who's playing Path of Exile the week that Diablo 4 launches? People that didn't buy Diablo 4. That's it. Like everybody that had the money and knew they were going to buy Diablo 4, that's the week to hop in. And the beginning of those seasons are so fun because everybody's like, oh my gosh, I got my first legendary. Oh my gosh, like that's really fun. Coming late into a season of ARPGs that are these big loot pinatas as a game, it can feel really weird. You're like, wow, I just got this. And your friend's like, yeah, those are pretty trash, huh? Like, I was so excited. So week one is a really fun time to be in ARPGs.
Absolutely. Veltis, and sorry if I butchered the name, says, speaking of Game Pass, didn't the Diablo 4 director say that there were no plans for D4 to come to Game Pass? What do you think, Chris? Is it coming?
So Blizzard doesn't have a history of putting all their games in Game Pass. And that's fine, right? World of Warcraft is never going to Game Pass. However, the conflicting statement is that Phil Spencer, who's in charge of Xbox, promised when Game Pass first launched that all Microsoft-owned games would be in Game Pass day and date of launch and remain in Game Pass for the life of the game. So, for as long as Activision Blizzard is not owned by Microsoft, which may be forever, that's a valid, interesting statement. Good to know. Never coming to Game Pass. If that becomes suddenly owned by Microsoft, then I believe Phil Spencer's words would overwrite that.
Yes. And
because they would become first party.
Ethium says yes, that it will. If Microsoft closes on the deal, it's coming. Why is there no plans? Because they haven't closed. You don't make plans also in this case. And they might not close. But if they do close and that deal goes through, yes. Now, will the seasonal updates, like, is everything in Diablo going to be included in Game Pass? No. I think they're just going to remove that barrier for entry of that initial price offering, because Microsoft is buying Activision Blizzard to fund and funnel more content into Game Pass, to make Game Pass I'm always going to be subscribed to this service. Why wouldn't I be? Because we're seeing already with the impact of Game Pass that like mid-core kind of games, well, even AAA, you would consider maybe AAA
games.
Is
the ESO subscription even discounted for Game Pass? I think it's still full price. I don't think they say.
No, yeah, they don't.
They just get the base game, which I think was in there before it closed. So when ZeniMax got bought, I think that was still just. I think it was still just like you still have to pay. So I don't think it changed ESO players at all.
Yeah, they haven't changed ESO. Like I think you have
base game is included in Game Pass,
and they have perks. Like one of the things about having Game Pass is you can claim a perk for the various different games, just like with Amazon, Prime Gaming. They have that same kind of thing. Like, hey, this month's Prime Gaming, you click a thing, you link this, whatever, and you get whatever. And so that essentially is going on now. When we talk about blocking the sale, like all the lawsuits and all that things are being fought, in court as expected. I do feel that, from everything I've read and listening to the lawyers who've been covering the case, like Microsoft has a strong case because the forces being brought against them is also doing the same various things, but they're just like, we do assume, we do kind of theorize.
Deal with Nintendo.
Yeah.
Because Sony said they're going to take Call of Duty away from us, and they haven't told us that they're not willing to write a contract with us saying they won't. And Microsoft said, oh, if we had a contract saying that we wouldn't make a game exclusive, that would be good. All right. We just signed one with Nintendo. Like, just
and everybody
shoved
else
it in Sony's face.
Well, and they've offered that to Sony, and Sony is like rejected. So at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be something that's like an easy close, but it's still, I think, probably more or less trending to being closed, because what they do is within those lawsuits, they come back with basically recommendations, and everybody's going to have different things. And at the end of the day, like, it's just basically costing Microsoft more and more money to get this deal closed. They want to get it closed. I know people who own Activision Blizzard, they want to get it closed. And then they'll just kind of go from there. But well, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. If it doesn't close, it will be a fascinating thing. And yeah, they don't like Activision Blizzard still its own complete separate entity, waiting to see what ultimately happens with it. And if it doesn't close, then yeah, I don't think you'll see Diablo 4 or any Activision Blizzard in Game Pass. But if it does, I could see something as a part of these contracts that they'll keep Call of Duty, because that's the real kind of key point there, out of Game Pass for a little while. But at some point, they're going to want to have that all in place, ready to rock and roll.
And there could be a ton of stipulations put on this as it struggles its way through the US and EU, and they go through any appeals process and any of that. I don't know the exact status as of today, but like there could be all sorts of, you have to have this performance, and if you don't, this has to be sold off. And like there can be all these different rules that say like, we're only going to let this go through under the following criteria, because letting it go through with no criteria is anti-consumer. That's who they're protecting. They're not worried about Sony. They're not worried about Nintendo. They're worried about the consumer.
Impact the consumer.
As long as it protects the consumer, it's fine.
Yeah. So yeah, regardless of whether it's the SEC, the EU or whoever, like all those things are all being fought out in court, countersuits and discoveries and all those things. So it will be, there is a potential that we'll get a lot of insight to see what Sony actually pays to keep games off of the Xbox, which is actively what they do. Sony puts a lot of money into keeping games off of the Xbox platform, and that information is all being submitted to them as well. So there could be good things for us as consumers, coming out of the pipe. My thing is like, I don't want to see Microsoft take games off of PlayStation. I'd rather everybody just publish everywhere. But I know that
ZeniMax, they've been true to everything they said was true. Like everything that they said publicly has been what they've done to this point.
Yeah, I'd still like to see Starfield.
Brand new IP, we're not sure on, but any existing IP that has been cross-platform will remain cross-platform, and that has been true.
I still like to see Starfield make its way over to PlayStation, and I'm fine if Microsoft wanted to hold that off for a year. I think that's ultimately would be better for the overall consumer. I get it from a single player game. You want to have your exclusive, get this thing over here first. But I think at the end of the day, when we're thinking about consumers, like I think it should all be about your choice. Like, what console do you like? In a multiplayer game, having that exclusive to a console is the death of the multiplayer game, because you're competing against much bigger communities and much bigger, draws. So it just does not seem to make sense. And Diablo 4 is a great case. Multiplayer game, cross-platform, play it wherever, and if it ends up coming to like GeForce Now, I think that'd be a real big win for gamers in the long run. Just having that other, that other option, whether you want to go through Xbox or whatever cloud platform you prefer.
As long as we live in a world where major AAA publishers are allowing things to be third-party exclusives, I have trouble having any opinion on first-party exclusive and how they're handled.
Yeah.
Like when we live in a world that companies that have plenty of money to put out their own games are taking checks to keep this off of certain platforms. So Final Fantasy 16 never, ever, ever comes to the Xbox. Like that's way more egregious to me than anything that has been acquired by Sony and Microsoft not making the jump.
Yeah. And again, because it's like now you have to sit down and try to avoid spoilers. Imagine like, hey, we're going to release this, this piece of content and only to, select people, but don't spoil it for anybody. Like All right. And then now, because also, especially when it comes down to it, now as a general community, the general rule is at some point, like, it's your fault for going on the internet. Like, all right, within 1 or 2 weeks, like, we could all have this agreed hush thing.
Yes.
But then, yeah.
Yes. If The Wire is spoiled for you this week because sadly Lance Reddick has passed, and then you are like, I'm going to go watch something I've never watched, that's not anybody's fault. But you're like, The Wire. The Wire, I don't even think comes in like standard 16:9. Like The Wire is very old. But if John Wick 4 is spoiled, that's different. So like, I don't know where the line is, but it's somewhere between in theaters and wow, is that really Idris Elba? He's so young.
And Debbie Link chimes in and says maybe Forspoken would have done better if it was on Xbox too. Forspoken would have done better if it was on Xbox. It would have also most likely it's been kept from Xbox because most likely their plan was to then wait a while and release it onto Game Pass. Like, I think that's essentially one of the biggest things is Sony is so concerned with Game Pass as a competitor.
Games on Xbox have been locked to like just their highest gen. The other thing is Xbox has been really about like how many gens of our console will it run on, and like Forspoken only runs on machines from like 2040. So I just am not sure that Xbox was like, will my Xbox Series S, would it even run Forspoken?
Yeah, you would run Forspoken. It wouldn't probably do it at 4K, you know.
Well, it can't do anything at 4K.
Right. Like so I think it'd run just fine because again, you're just optimizing for that one platform and not for every potential. Here's the list of giant graphics cards, etc., that you're trying to run. Because like even on the 3080, like me running Forspoken in ultra wide ran great, but I couldn't run it in ultra wide at the 1440p, which is
you don't want the week one of Cyberpunk over again. You don't want people having issues.
Yeah.
So like there is an advantage to a game that is that like invested in its fidelity, having as few places to bug test as possible. That's a little bit different. Mm-hmm. But that was always going to be weird. Like there's always those kind of like generational games as far as like graphics go, and they always end up being really isolated. Who gets to take part in those?
Now, Pride Izzy writes, Xbox isn't selling well from my read. It's not even at 5 million total sales, while Switch and PS5 are both over 50 million. Switch is actually coming up on 120 million units, and people keep speculating about the Switch too. And I'm like, I don't know. I think they're just kind of letting seeing what kind of technology jumps happen to the next year before they worry about pushing that out. And the Switch in and of itself is still not like, insane hardware, but it's great.
I used to be really frustrated that they wouldn't like put out hardware and then put out like a pro version. But when they tried to jump from the Wii to the Wii U, like it took such a big jump that it like the Wii U was like, oh, it's going to do everything the Wii does and so much more. Yeah, except not. So like I get super concerned about like a true Switch Pro because I just can't help but think that like somebody at Nintendo is going to be like, yeah, but now you throw it. And it's like, why? Why? For what reason? Like you couldn't just make better caliber controllers and upscale everything to 4K and make a version that like doesn't come off the dock so that it's nice and powerful. Like you can't they just always have to. You're like, man, this hamburger is so good. It'd be good if we like added like cheese or bacon or like veggies next time. And you're like, yeah. Mm-hmm. Or we had you catch a live chicken. Nintendo, what is wrong with you?
Come on, Nintendo.
Like, why do you always have to make it weird? You just take it so far.
So in terms of this
generation,
I think Xbox, the Series systems have actually sold pretty well. The Series S, I know, has done actually like pretty well historically for Japan, especially because of its form factor and size. But the thing is, what's interesting here, kind of bring this back to the SEC and that whole discussion, is there's two fronts. Microsoft is presenting their worst numbers to all of the different entities, showcasing that PlayStation has 80-90% of market share, et cetera. But internally, and then also at the same time, not to the SEC and all the bodies, they represent their view isn't just the console, but also the ecosystem. So if you run Windows, guess what? You're on an Xbox. Like that in and of itself is how they think of the global ecosystem, in which that's why when they release a game, they also release it same day and day, cross-play, cross-save on PC as well. And their platform, the real shift here in my mind, everything I've seen them do, it's really kind of, you see these generational mindsets. Microsoft thinks of Game Pass as actually their platform. Their platform is Game Pass. They have a hardware console, they have PC, they have all of these ways that you can interact with Game Pass, but their platform is Game Pass, where Sony's platform is the PS5. And so there is a differential shift in that. Now, they don't want to go to the SEC and present that, because I would theorize that if anything else, the best thing in all cases is just bring Game Pass to PlayStation. And the only thing that prevents that is play Sony's browser. Being that you can play Game Pass in a browser, Sony would just need to enable that site. Microsoft does that did it with Stadia, does it with GeForce Now. Like, you can just play whatever cloud games on an Xbox. They're not restrictive of that, but PlayStation is. They're like, no. We're still more protective of the ecosystem. So you really, you got choices when it comes down to it. In terms of sales, though, like, I think, Microsoft wants to present the smallest numbers to the governing bodies just for
Obviously.
that same.
Yeah.
And Steam Deck too coming in, like when we're talking about Nintendo, hands down.
Why would you? Yes, it makes 100% sense to do it that way. Like, if people's concerned, like if Brian and I are entering a weight loss challenge, then I want to put on all the weight I can before it starts. Right?
Exactly.
Like, that's just playing the game. And Sony's doing it the exact same way. They're going, but Microsoft's so much bigger than us. Look at their biggest number compared to our smallest number. Like, they're 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And it's
Meanwhile, then they turn around to go to like some bank and secure a loan, and they're like, look at our maximum number.
Yeah, look how big, look at these trillions of dollars.
Of course.
Meanwhile,
and if you do that to a certain degree, that's where it becomes like, it can become fraud. Like, you have to be really careful how you navigate this, which is why they have an army of lawyers.
Meanwhile, what's happening behind the scenes, while a lot of people are just focusing in on the Microsoft versus Sony, like Amazon is just like acquiring new different IP. No. All like, don't pay attention to me. Amazon's like, oh no.
Yeah.
Who's heard of Tomb Raider?
To blow out the candles on the cake, and Amazon's in the corner like eating the cake. Like, it's like, sorry.
So by the
turn
time
around, there's no cake.
Right.
Like, what happens? Like, well, Amazon ate the cake. Like yeah, because they're big too.
100%, dude. So chat saying, Amazon, don't you mean Embracer? Amazon bought Tomb Raider from Embracer. So Embracer paid Square Enix $300 million, and we're assuming cleared off some debt. Like, $300 million for what Embracer bought is just too freaking low. But $300 million was the number that Square Enix got deposited into their account for releasing all their Western studios. Tomb Raider IP was a part of that. Amazon paid Embracer $600 million just for Tomb Raider. That's the deal of the year. Like, hey guys,
Square Enix sold the entire party venue that Sony and Microsoft are arguing over, and then for $1,000, and then Embracer came in and was like, yeah, we'll pay that. And then they sold just the cake to Amazon for like $3,000, and Amazon's like, okay. It's like, I don't know how all that math is. I assume Embracer had debt that they saddled into it.
Yeah,
they were like, yeah, you can buy the party venue, you can buy the cake, but you also have to be our laundry butler.
Exactly.
So I assume there's something else that we're just not seeing, because otherwise, like, Square Enix are idiots, Amazon's idiots. Microsoft and Sony are arguing over nothing. Like, it just, I don't know what is happening. There is serious money changing hands over nothing.
Yeah. And Wargiver says, Microsoft and Sony will not see Amazon as a threat until the day they release a console. Phil Spencer says he's actually not worried about Sony. Amazon, and he said Google, but Google's, they bowed out pretty quick. But Amazon's a real threat. And Amazon has a console. It is called Luma, and it is a cloud-based console that actually has a Windows backend. They are continuing to add games very quietly to that service.
Cloud-based, it's not even real.
Yeah, I've played it like when I was ranking all the different cloud services. Like, my disappointment that Stadia is no more was Stadia was the best and fastest tech. Like, it was.
Did Amazon buy Stadia from Google?
I would think that would be something that'd be interesting on the table. Do you think they do a trade? Do you think they do a trade? They say, hey, why don't you just go ahead and have Twitch? Or maybe we'll start doing a tag share.
That deal. Nobody. If Call of Duty is worth fighting over, There is no way Twitch and YouTube can be owned by the same company. There's no way. And they're going to be like, but Kick is so big.
Kick's over there.
Fine. It's
got that 95. You got that 95 split. Oh my gosh. It is going to be an exciting decade, guys. I hope you guys buckle the F up because this is going to be thrilling at its core. Because so yeah, Amazon, they bought MGM. They own James Bond. They own Stargate. Playing New World, Brimstone Sands got a lot of Stargate references in that. And
Daniel Craig could go through the Stargate portal. That could happen. It shouldn't. But money can make that happen now
on Prime.
Prime.
Yeah, like Amazon's making some interesting and very I would say successful moves. I think he well, I'm not going to spoil it. Well, we're really if you haven't seen the movie by now, no, Daniel Craig has finished his run as James Bond.
I thought
so. We'll see what happens next with that.
And then people were proposing some people, and then people were mad. Because then it became a question of what is the criteria to become Bond?
Yeah.
I used to think handsome and British, but I've been told that is not in deep enough set of requirements.
Interestingly enough, I identify as handsome and British. Oh, no reaction.
You gotta be really jacked, dude.
I have really
modern gun. Modern ones do. That's a new thing.
I have from this up, I am rock solid and jacked. Check out these freaking guns, dude. But downstairs, Idris
Elba is a beautiful man.
I love Idris Elba to be Bond. I think that would be phenomenal.
He's a great actor, and he is a beautiful man.
Dude, I loved him in all the Thors. I don't think I've seen a movie with Idris Elba that I have not enjoyed. He is just, I think, just a class actor. I would love to see that. Chat saying give David Tennant as Bond. I can't even think of him. I gotta Google that. Who's David Tennant? Why I
have not watched the new Luther movie, so there was a TV show.
Oh my gosh, yes, dude, he's such a good actor. Okay, I was I recognize him. It's the Purple Man in Jessica Jones.
Purple Man.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so good. And 10th Doctor, Doctor Who. That's one of the series I never got into is Doctor Who. I guess that's the
you can travel anywhere in space and time as long as it's 17th century London.
Perfect.
That's a little oversimplifying.
Oversimplifying. All right. Let's jump into our last
somebody off.
Let's jump
into
our
last. Thank you for the time
segment.
you did subscribe to Work to Game. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we appreciate
you. It was great.
How many? What's our average sub loss? I'm just let's just here we go. Analytics.
300.
No. It's got
Doctor Who jokes.
The Doctor Who did it. The Doctor Who did it. We're at 268 sub loss each and every month, guys. Be sure to like and subscribe. We love you guys. Appreciate y'all.
I'm really happy with everything we've been making lately. I really am. I'm having a lot of fun. I really am. But when somebody came into Twitch chat to just spew off a bunch of hate, how we just do things for the growth, I'm like, I don't think that's how that works. I'm just confused mostly.
You can absolutely tell when you have a lazy.
They were so angry.
You could tell when you have a lazy troll. Lazy trolls are the easiest to spot because they say something like that we fundamentally. I could pull up a screen right now and everybody's going to go, "Oh, there's a fact. Math checks out. Not why we do what we do."
We like that people are here and we like doing it. That's why we're here.
Yeah, exactly.
And as long as it's some people doing it and we're having fun, we're going to keep doing it.
Exactly. That's
it's great. Thank you guys.
And we knew the thing was for me, Chris and I were with the pivot where we announced it wasn't me leaving 14. We announced the pivot before that. And then we were like, oh, this is going to be where the sub drops. And no, it just kept going up and up and up. And then eventually, not even me announcing, it was through after Endwalker launched that all of a sudden the numbers just started dropping each and every month.
And away from guides was bad, right? If you're looking at growth, pivot away from growth content was bad for growth, just mathematically.
Right. But that just makes more sense. It's people are subbing for this, but then they're not watching this or that. Like maybe we'll just do the thing that we want to do, and if they like it, they like it, and if they don't, like we're just gonna we'll have to just deal with it.
It's why we always say there should be more creators. And there are so many. The 14 directory has gotten so much bigger. And there's over the last 5 years, there's been just a substantial increase in the caliber, not just in the new ones, but like a lot of the old school veterans have really upped their game. There is some incredible stuff coming out of the 14 directory. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Cloud RDS says, authors, why streamers quit Final Fantasy 14 is a good 7-minute video. Have you seen that yet?
Why streamers quit?
Yeah.
No, I started his why Zeppla quit.
Okay.
And
that was good. Julie and I laughed our asses off throughout that one.
I had it running while I was doing dishes, and I kind of missed some parts, but
it summarizes everything we've said about how like you have what we call the classic rug pull within the Final Fantasy 14 community. New streamer comes in. Oh, this is so great. Oh, wow. Like people are really interested watching me do all these things. Oh my goodness. Oh, man, this game is just perfect. Ultimately, oh, I finished the story. Oh my gosh, tears. This is wonderful. All right, doing the content. Oh, wait, where's everybody going? Wait, come back. What's happening? Why? I quit my job for this. Oh God, no. Like that's my
I told my boss to screw off, and I tattooed Final Fantasy on my forearm. All over 6 weeks of data, and it really hurt my feelings. Seems bold. Seems bold. I would recommend paying off your student loans first.
Yeah,
that's my first recommendation.
100%.
That's how I do this. Thank God. That was such a burden. I have friends that are still under it. Looks hard.
Yeah, I look forward to Chris kind of watching that, because like the chat's actually talking about, it's like he brings up some good points about where it is. I think Asmon also brought up some similar points like along the way back in the day. And so it's a fascinating video.
His reactions have gotten long. I thought I was long-winded. I was trying to watch an Asmon video the other day. It was like an hour.
Oh, an hour.
An hour. An hour.
It's a big commitment. It's a big commitment. All right. As we wind down the show, like we probably were going to have to come back and do another comments section video because I probably put way too many comments than Chris and I can actually get through. So be sure, if you guys are watching this, like, sub, share, leave a comment, because that's actually why we're here. And who knows, maybe we can, it'll be interesting to see if we have a positive growth month so that the trolls who hate us can actually think we're doing this for the growth. So if you guys haven't subscribed over on the YouTube side, it's a free little click. You can also double tap the dislike button. Interestingly enough, our videos are very well liked from the people who watch them. So we guys appreciate you. Okay, so we went and curated a bunch of different comments, and we'd like to be able to try to bring this back a little bit more. We'll get through as many comments as we can get through in this video itself. I've got way more than we've got 10 minutes, but we'll go ahead and spend some time in this. Mitchell writes, as someone who's quit games purely due to the FOMO, one of the things that really made me love Final Fantasy XIV was the fact that they added things to the shop eventually. I mean that I was always had the option, even if I didn't choose to nab the items in game. Feeling like I missed something I didn't even know was around, and now I'm just kind of screwed, is one of the worst feelings. But I am a very collection-oriented, so maybe I'm a minority. Also, Final Fantasy XIV has done some dumb FOMO things too, so they aren't perfect at this. And this is obviously talking about our concept of the seasonal model within New World and Final Fantasy XIV. 14 seasons, they move them into the cash shop, then 1 year after, and that's been the established pattern that they've done for 10 years. What do you think, Chris?
I don't like that the seasonal events don't just come back in the first place. Like I would rather just bypass the whole thing and just say like you can do it next Easter. I don't think that needs to be like World of Warcraft, where they just don't update the event ever. Like
right.
That there are events that are like 10 years old and they've been identical. It would be nice if they kind of breathe some life into them. But I can see this point of view. I can, I think like Guild Wars selling living seasons, and they are cheaper mounts. So it's not like they're $35 mounts. So they're not just gouging. It's a lot like living seasons, where it's cheap stuff if you really want to pick it up. So I can see this point of view. I prefer, the collecting is about the journey for me. I very rarely actually finish any collections I start, but I like the act of collecting. The act of the hoarding portion is the part I like, not having the hoard. That I often find stressful. So I have crap all over my house for that reason. I like the act of acquiring. And so I would like to see the quests come back. And so if that's going to be the case, right, it's like a compromise between what Mitchell's suggesting and what I would want, then if I buy that item, then give me the quest back in New Game Plus. So give me the quest in New Game Plus and put the quest in New Game Plus for anybody that did do it. Like, I would like to see that, even if it was only available during the event, because the New Game Plus stuff within the events has started to come back. It's kind of weird. They've done it for a couple of recent events. Have had it where like you walk up to them and you can talk to them and replay that. So I would love to see New Game Plus include the seasonal events, especially because the seasonal events oftentimes, specifically, because that's what we're talking about here, they have all these really fun interactions with people from the story. And if you are a brand new player who hasn't done Heavensward yet, and you're going through the free trial, which does include the critically acclaimed Heavensward, you could be like pushing through this and not have a relationship with somebody that the seasonal event makes really light of. And those seasonal events are more fun if you're getting all the references in all the optional portion, like the last step. And it would be really neat if you could go back and kind of re-experience those, especially if something significant happens. Let's imagine in 7.0 that a major character that we've interacted with off and on since whatever expansion either dies or gets a big role and like steps forward and is now our buddy, or takes us to some new place and we're excited about that. And so they become all the talk of the town, more so than they've ever been before. It would be really fun to go back and re-experience all the journeys we've had with them in the past. And some of that flavor is locked behind seasonal events that are just gone outside of Gamer Escape.
So my thing would be kind of a slightly different approach from what you suggested, because I do think the quests themselves, like it'd be really great if somebody's coming in this year would be able to play the story pieces in the chapters all the way leading into the current current chapter. Obviously, I think New Game Plus makes the most sense to be able to kind of step back in time, so that way you're not like, oh, congrats, you got 10 years worth of this quest to do before the new one goes away and you have to wait a year. But I think it'd be interesting to see in terms of, because like we talked about that in that video, a core aspect of it is more or less connected to them wanting to put stuff in the cash shop, especially earlier on, right? Them putting that stuff in the cash shop, that made sense at the time. I think it'd be interesting to say keep the quests in, and doing the quests would give you a discount on the item. They could always keep the same price, but like if you finish the in-game,
like there's a quest skip portion of the price.
Yeah. So if you've skipped the quest or whatever, it's now like Nebulink says, the $5 or whatever. But if you've now done the quest, if you've gone and actually done the quest, ting, hit your account, guess what? It's $250, or whatever. Like the
price of your scavenger hunt is a coupon.
Well, and you get it for free if you're on the current, the current story piece or whatever. But then they could still have it flow into the shop. They could still have it to where it's like, yeah, you kind of, like if you go and do the quest, you can purchase it. You can go purchase any of the seasonal items now that they're on the shop whenever you want. But if you do the work, if you do the activity, then you can just be like, you can have that discounted look. Mitchell actually is also in chat. So we got Mitchell here. He says, would love for the events to also be a New Game Plus, as it's the only option. Those recording those events. Some are doing them now, but some also have the earliest events are just functionally gone. And yeah, I think a lot of people would get behind at least the quests and the story piece, because you have to live through YouTube. You have to live through the Gamer Escape to experience those now 100%. Now, like I said, comment section, that was a big one. I've got one comment I want to highlight for us live. And as we kind of wrap up today's live show, we'll be back next Monday, guys. So just, ring that bell, and, I get them scheduled out for y'all. And so keep bringing us your topics and your comments and so much more, because there's a lot of fun. But Ryan over on the YouTube chat says, there seems to be so much attention drawn on creators leaving Final Fantasy XIV, but people ignore the quality creators that have stuck around for years. What do you think, Chris?
I mean, they get their due when that's the news. So like the Fat Black Chocobo event, the media tour, Fan Fest, live letters. These are all times when people look to the people who have always been there, either to say, man, I wish you were more involved in this, or to say, I'm so glad you are involved in this. So I think that does come around. I think it's just at a different time. So I think Ryan points out like a valid reason of like, it is easy to lose context during these times of dramas, people leaving, that we're forgetting about all those other times. But come March 31st, when we move into the next live letter, that focus will shift back onto those. When people go click a Cole or a Quasi or a Mr. Happy response to the live letter. And if the live letter has something in it about the next Savage, then there'll be like a Zines and an Arthur response to that. And like, and like Zeppo didn't quit. So like Zeppo will be back until it's back. And so like there will be that focus on people and up and comers. There are people who, there will probably be somebody who this is their first ever live letter to respond to, and they'll put that out. As we move into the hype season, you will see that emphasis. The hype season for 7.0 will begin in July with FanFest. Whether they're going or not, that'll be the beginning of that time. And the people who have that long history of covering the game, that's when those communities will go, man, I'm so excited to see what your opinion is. And whether they've stuck around and they've just been here cranking. Quasi's been here for a minute now and has been cranking. Mr. Happy's been here since forever and has been cranking. Or there's somebody who's gone, they've kind of been a little absent, focused on other things, but they come back for events like this. People like Larry's are, who may put something out around that. They're like, hey, I'm really excited for your thoughts on this, even though you haven't been putting out as much content as of late.
Yeah, what's interesting, especially because like this gets into a lot more inside baseball, is that there are content creators who are just always kind of following the trends. And so you saw those just come into 14. They've already moved on. They're covering whatever the new hot hyped game is. And they just kind of have to keep always chasing that. And like, there's nothing wrong with that mindset if that's the kind of the content that they want to make. 14 hit a huge wave going into Endwalker where it was the be all end all. I remember getting interviewed by a magazine because I was a 14 content creator. And I think I blew their socks off because they were like, hey, like, aren't you so glad that 14's doing so well and you've been this content creator and you're known and established? What are your plans after Endwalker? And I go, well, I'm probably going to quit the game. And they looked at me like I was nuts. And I was like, I've been telegraphing this. Like, if I'm not having a good time, it's finishing the story. I don't know how I'm going to feel. I'm going to make a choice that's best for me as a player. And that's essentially what obviously came to pass. But the guy looked at me like I was like nuts. He's like, was not an expected answer for that interview. And I think essentially when it comes down to content creation, like what Chris and I have talked about, is that with a 2-year cycle, like even talking with My Name is Bife about this, content creation is a feast and famine kind of mindset. Like it's this mindset of just like, oh my gosh, like this is going really well. Like you've heard Chris probably say when the sun shines, like make wheat, like
make hay while the sun shines.
There it is. And so when all those things are going down, like you have the ability to kind of try and capitalize that because you know that there's going to be a January and a February of the new year that it's like, okay, well, yeah, I hope that you have content that performed and that you can survive that, because being a full-time content creator has a whole different level of responsibilities and stressors that a lot of people take on. I think when it comes down to it, like Chris said, yeah, like you'll see the people who are healthily, and it's a healthy thing, taking, breaks and playing other games. I like that aspect because it also can give you context to what this game is doing or that game is doing, to say, hey, this game's doing something really cool and unique. Wouldn't it be great if we could translate that into some way into this other game that also adds a lot of context, a lot of health for it. I think though, it's essentially, there's that other side of the coin besides the content creators. It's the demand for what people are willing to click on and watch, which also drives a lot of these things. There's like companies that literally study like, oh, this trending topic is doing this or this is doing that. Like go ahead and like try to make that video, and they try to make recommendations for all these things, which is really quite interesting. So I'm not ever really worried about the trends on these things. We saw the same thing with leaving WoW, back in the day, like everybody was quitting WoW for 14, and because people wanted to see that content. So that demand on what people are interested in drives a lot of the bystanders or passive, like any kind of content creator or just somebody who wants to make a video, like, hey, maybe I'll share my thoughts on this because I have a different perspective. And we want to encourage that. We want to encourage the ability for people to sit down and share their thoughts, because everybody's going to have either a slightly different perspective or a radically different perspective. And that in and of itself, I think, is a good thing for the overall conversation that's going on.
Next comment.
We're out of time.
We're out. That's it.
That's it.
We'll have to do more shows.
We'll have to do more. Guys,
the game will continue. We were gonna cut it off.
That was it.
But the comments, there's too many good comments.
We got through one comment. How many comments did I actually pull up? Yeah, there was like I
He
had
pulled
10
3 hours
different
worth of
comments. Oh, it could have been 3 hours, just to know the fact of how long-winded we are. So it's like 22 minutes later times 10, baby. Let's freaking go. All right, guys. Chris is going to hang out, continue over on the Twitch side of things. If you want to go hang out with him and you're over on the YouTube, click the link in the description and go ride that wave over there. Otherwise, we thank you guys so much for this. We'll be back on Monday, probably talking about Chris's impressions of Diablo 4, any other who quit this or that, like whatever, like things that we can hopefully provide a level of context and clarity to. Ideally, no, stop quitting games, people.
Every game you play, you now have to play forever.
Ever, for all eternity. You locked it in.
Be really careful adding those new games.
I really feel bad for Skill Up.
Dangerous.
I really feel bad for Skill Up. He's reviewed a lot of games. Woo. It's going to be tough being him.
That's why he doesn't do live service.
Yeah.
He covers a couple, but he's mostly covering things that have an end.
Like I finished that one. Success. All right, guys. Love you guys so much. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks again for the likes on the stream. If this was a highlight that you watched, thanks for the likes on that. And I'm going to hit the end broadcast and wave it out. And we will see you next time.